My name is Colin Sankey. I'm here to give a masterclass on solo electric bass techniques. But a disclaimer before we start, this is actually not a disclaimer, but an invitation. You guys, this is, although this is about electric bass, this masterclass will give you, some tools to learn in your own musical journey, regardless of what instrument you play or what you kind of orchestrating. So it can help you with any kind of instrument and any kind of orchestration. So I encourage you to kind of take these tools and learn, use them to apply to anything that you're working on. I'm going to start by playing a short song of mine that I wrote called Musica della Noche, and I'm going to kind of go through the process from beginning to end of how to construct an arrangement or composition through the various levels, from the simplest to the highest level of complexity, and then go through some of my tools and stuff that I learned or that I use. So yeah, this is a song from my debut album called Musica della Noche. And transcription is there on the projector, and we'll go through that in a minute. Thanks so much, everyone. That was the tune Musica della Noche from my debut album released last year, Reawakening. I took that song to New York for a solo bass competition, and then I ended up winning the first place in that competition. So that's, thank you. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you from Sept 1 through 7, kind of how to construct an arrangement like that from like the lowest level of complexity to the highest that I'm technically capable of playing, and then you can kind of use that in your own kind of journey as a musician and an arranger and composer. So, does anybody know what this is? It is the tab, but what song is it? Yep, Seb got it. It's Yardbird Suite. Seb gets a free CD after, but I think he already has one, so. So that's the melody to Yardbird Suite. So I thought I would give kind of an example of a jazz standard, but you can apply this to pop arrangements too, since I do a lot of pop arrangements and jazz. So this is just the melody to Yardbird Suite. This is kind of like the first level of complexity where you can play the song and still have it be recognized as the song. Like, we're not starting with a bass line because people might not recognize it just based on the bass line alone, unless they really know jazz harmony, and then they might know it. But this is the melody to Yardbird Suite. This is the kind of foundation of our arrangement. This is something that kind of like will see like people like Adam Neely and Jacob Collier go through on YouTube, like the 7 levels of complexity or the 5 levels. So this is the first level. And what is this melody? Let's see if I can play it. Right? That's the kind of, you hear that and if you know like Charlie Parker and stuff, you recognize that as Yardbird Suite. Okay, the second step to that is just to add a root note bass line. So if you're playing like fingerstyle guitar, you might add the notes in with your thumb, play the bass line. If you're playing piano, right, the notes with your left hand. If you're doing two-handed tapping, you would do that with your, or bass, sorry, you would do that with the tapping technique. So, not sure if I can actually play this. Right, whatever, right? So now we've got the foundation of the harmony and the melody. So that's kind of like the first couple building blocks of our arrangement, right? And if you're arranging a song for an orchestration, right, you might start with the bass and the melody, right? You've kind of got the foundations of the harmony and the melody itself, right? So the next step after that is going to be the two feel. So basically, we're just basically doing the same exact thing that we did here with the root note bass line, but we're in the chords that are 1 bar long. Instead of just half a bar, we're adding fifths. So this is the fifth. So, I should have written the chords. That would be easier. But this is C6, I think. So root fifth, right? So we've got C6. This is F minor, B flat 13. And then we've got C, B flat 13. What is this? A, and this is A, is this A minor 7 or A7? I can't remember. But But the point is, we've got the root and the fifth, so we're filling up those empty spaces with the fifth. So again, we're adding another level of complexity here, and it's going to start to sound more musical. Let's see if I can play this. Right? So it's starting to sound like something, but it's still not quite there. It doesn't really sound like an arrangement yet, does it, right? So now we get to step 4, which is a walking bass line, right? And I mean, this could be a part of an arrangement, this two-field part, but it's not going to be the whole thing, right? Because it doesn't give us enough of an idea of the actual harmony of the song for us to really capture like a full musical concept. So we're gonna move on to step 4, which is a walking bass line. Now we have a complete sort of walking bass line that follows in the jazz idiom. So now we're kind of filling in a little bit of the harmony, filling in obviously all the gaps in terms of the bass line here. And yeah, let's see. Sorry, I've been playing the second ending every time, but you get the idea. So that's basically the bass line played with a walking bass line. So now it's actually starting to sound like something, right? It has a complete kind of melodic direction in the bass line, and also it has the entire melody in there. So we're getting somewhere, but it still doesn't sound complete, right? So next we're going to add the chord melody in the right hand. So now we're actually filling out the harmony. Now we've kind of got something that will sound like an arrangement, and you'll hear, like, you know, if you ever listen to Victor Wooten, a lot of his arrangements kind of go to this level of having like a chord melody in the right hand, bass line in the left hand. It sounds like he's doing 2 to 3 parts at the same time, and that kind of fills out the whole composition. The idea is that you've kind of got the 3 main constituent parts of music, right? Melody, rhythm, and harmony. Obviously, beyond that, you want to go beyond that and add dynamics, articulations. We've got some of that here, right, with the slides. We've got, you know, you could add, you know, arpeggios here, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. Let's stick to having a chord melody in the right hand. That's step number 5. Oh, and I'm taking up the melody an octave here because, and this is something you want to keep in mind when you're arranging something, not just for solo bass, is what octave, what register you want the melody to be in, because if you play this too low, you see you've got the harmony notes below here, it's going to sound a bit muddy, right? Especially these chords. Right, versus that's up an octave. It sounds more, it's a lot less muddy, right? So that's one thing you can want to think about. Now, if you're playing fewer notes in the harmony, right, fewer notes below the melody, you can actually get away with putting the melody lower down in the register because there's less room for muddiness. You're not, you know, clogging up that low frequency register of like the sonic space, right? So, but in this case, we're starting to fill out the harmony more, so we want to take the melody up an octave. So let's see how this sounds. There you go. So that's the arrangement with a chord melody written in the right hand. So you can see it's starting to sound like something. It's starting to sound pretty cool. We're definitely filling out the harmonies such that it kind of sounds like we have like a chord instrument, like a guitar playing the chord melody and a bass player playing. So we have like kind of that level of like, it maybe sounds like a guitar bass duet, or maybe a piano. I mean, piano players have 10 fingers that they can use, so they could easily do this stuff solo, but basically that's kind of what you have. You have polyphony now, right? Counterpoint and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that you can use to make an arrangement kind of more musical. So the next step to this is adding another voice in the left hand. This is where it starts to get quite technical because you're having to coordinate multiple voices in the right hand and multiple voices in the left hand simultaneously. So technically, this becomes obviously something that takes a ton of practice. But I mean, if you're not composing for a solo instrument, you're composing for an orchestration, then obviously you don't have to worry about that as much. But this is kind of where it starts to get very challenging, and it will require a lot of practice, a lot of slowing down, a lot of really just working around like the the motor skills, the sort of technical aspect of that. But once you get there, it starts to really fill out the harmony. You can see this is the part I'd have added. This whole first 6 bars is actually just the same as the last step. The part that sounds the emptiest to me, is the last 2 bars, that 3, 6, 2, 5 there. Right? This is E minor 7, what is that? A7, D minor 7, G7. So a 3, 6, 2, 5, right? If we're talking jazz harmony. So this, especially this part where you basically just got one note that you're holding on to in the right hand, we're going to kind of fill that up and add some more harmonic interest there. So let's see how that sounds. Right, so that was the part that we added there was in the left hand. Right, so what I'm doing basically is adding my free fingers in the left hand to kind of accent certain notes in the chords. Usually just thirds and sevenths, because that's all we really have room to do. If you play like a ninth down here, it's going to sound kind of muddy. So thirds and sevenths, kind of the way to go, right? D is the 7th of E minor 7, C sharp is the 3rd. So you have 7th resolving to 3rd, 7th resolving to 3rd. That's kind of that chromatic motion there that sounds kind of nice, right? 7, 6, 5, 4, D, C sharp, C, B. So that's one thing that we're adding a little bit of rhythmic interest, because what we're doing was we're adding some swinging notes there, and we're adding some harmonic interest by filling out some of the harmony. So now we're starting to sound more and more like a full band, and that's kind of what we're getting at when we're doing solo arrangements. Is you kind of want to mimic the sound of a full band. I don't know if any of you have heard of Luca Stricagnoli or something. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but he's like a famous acoustic guitar player, and he just like fills out every he does more like pop arrangements, but he fills out every single space with just like percussive stuff, and that's kind of what you want to do. It sounds like a full band, and so that's the kind of challenge that we're up against here. Very technically challenging, but musically rewarding in a lot of ways. Okay, so we've kind of filled out some of these gaps here in the 3, 6, 2, 5 section. The next step is kind of optional, and you might not always go here, because it might you don't always need to go to this level, because you already have pretty much a complete arrangement by step 5 or 6. This is something you might add a little bit more flash here and there to kind of capture people's attention and kind of fill it out even more, so to speak. So this last 8 bars here, this is step 7, is actually the how I played this song on my record. This is my solo arrangement of Yardbird Suite, and this is actually note for note how I played the first 8 bars. So I'm going to play that in a minute for you here, but first we'll go over what we're adding. So we've basically covered that we have the bass line, the melody, some harmony in the right hand, some extra harmony in the left hand. What are we doing? We're adding another voice in the right hand here. So all we're doing is in the spaces where we have a finger free to be technically capable, like here we don't have a finger free, for instance. If you are able to play a 7th or 3rd here in the right hand, while you're playing this, I'll give you $1 million because it's technically impossible. But here it's possible, right? Because you're just holding this note with one finger. So that's, sometimes it's just about technically finding where those little gaps where you have a finger free to play an extra note. You don't always have to do that. Sometimes it doesn't sound musical, but in this case, I think it does. And it adds something to the arrangement because now it sounds like there's a guitar player here kind of accenting the chords on the upbeats. We're adding some kind of swinging rhythms here. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Exactly. We've taken, so basically with a two-handed tapping thing, we've taken our right hand and turned it into another left hand, almost like the piano. So, whoops. So basically, what we're doing is rather than, finger style, right? What we're basically doing is we're taking our left hand down here and our right hand up here, right? And now it's like kind of like a piano, right? So instead of, and this just like opens up a lot of doors when you're doing either solo acoustic guitar or piano or solo any type of guitar and bass. It opens up, this technique opens up a lot of doors because you have more facility over how you can, the harmonies and the notes and voices you can play. You can play almost like 4 voices, up to 4 voices at the same time when you're tapping versus finger style. Finger style is more conducive to acoustic guitar because you can use a lot of open string chords. Open string chords don't work as well on the bass because they sound very muddy, right? They can work well on a bass string with piccolo strings because they're strung, their pitch is really high, almost into the guitar range. But typically, if you're tapping on a bass, you would, to fill out the harmony, you use the two-handed tapping technique to kind of get as many voices as you can. Finger style, you can. Your left hand taps too, that's exactly right. Both hands tap, your right hand and your left hand. So think of the left hand as like the bass line, okay? And think of the right hand as like the melody, right? But, if we only have 2 voices then, right? The way you extend the arrangement beyond that is anytime you kind of have a finger free, while you're playing the melody, for instance, you use that to fill in gaps in the harmony. Same within the left hand. You can kind of use those times when you have a finger free. So, for example, right? So bass line, but my ring finger is free. So now that my ring finger is free, I can add some notes and fill in those gaps. Same with the right hand, right? Whoops. So what I'm doing in the right hand there, I'll just demonstrate what I'm doing in the right hand there just to kind of give an idea. What I'll do is I'll just play the left hand here. So that's the bass line, and we've added some extra chord tones at the end. The right hand is just. Right? So you can hear how there's the melody notes and harmony notes in there. So I'm going to play both those parts at the same time. I haven't played this arrangement in a while, but hopefully this is possible. You can kind of get the idea of what level 7 sounds like. So that's level 7. Now we've filled out a lot of the harmony. We have a bass line. We have a melody. It sounds like a complete arrangement. Now, obviously, if you're playing bebop, this is probably going to be a lot faster than I just played it, but, you get the picture. Now, there are steps to go beyond this, right? For example, I have some bass arpeggios here. That you can kind of add for extra flair, right? But these are kind of like techniques that you might use sparingly, because if you overload your arrangements with these, it's going to sound like you're just shredding and you're not, you want to kind of go back to the melody as much as possible. But this would be kind of like level 8, so to speak. If you wanted to go there, you don't have to. That's optional, right? So that's basically from the building blocks of an arrangement. So you're starting from the simplest, going from the melody, adding bass line, adding harmony, adding harmony in both hands, and adding, here's like a little fill, so adding little melodic fills and counterpoint. I had a version of Isn't She Lovely a while back where one of the levels was to add counterpoint. So like that kind of idea, adding fills in between some of the melody parts to kind of create some extra interest. That's something, again, you can do, but one issue with that, one caveat with that is if you overuse it, it's not going to sound musical because you're just jamming in every possible gap with something, right? It might just sound good just like this, right? You can see I didn't add any extra fills in there. I just kind of, added some, filled out the harmony. I just basically played the melody and then, the bass lines and the harmony, and that was pretty much it. And then also some percussive backbeat stuff. That's another thing that really helps with kind of fleshing out arrangements is adding a percussive backbeat, to kind of create a sense of rhythm. So that, I didn't use that as much in this arrangement, but if you go over to my arrangement of Get Lucky, this is more pop oriented. So we have kind of like the 6 or 7 levels here or whatever, right? We have melody. This is obviously a lot of 16th notes, so maybe hard to read, but you can see here where's the, so for starters, where is the backbeat usually in pop music, right? 2 and 4, right. So if we're in 2 and 4, you can see how I'm hitting 2 and 4 here a lot. Obviously, I'm hitting a lot of other stuff other than 2 and 4, but I'm kind of accenting 2 and 4. You'll see that in a minute here. So I'm going to play some of this, and you'll see how I'm constantly emphasizing 2 and 4 to create that kind of, pulse that kind of mimics the sound again of a full band because we're hitting like a snare drum on the backbeat. So yeah, here's Get Lucky. Thank you. So basically, you saw what I did there, right? You could hear that backbeat. Sometimes I was slapping it, sometimes I was tapping it. So like, you can hear that I'm slapping it. I used to strum it, but I found that the slap was a little bit stronger and a little bit more attack. So I used the slap to kind of really emphasize that backbeat there. Here's a pluck that emphasizes the backbeat there. So sometimes you can use different techniques to emphasize where the backbeat is. On acoustic guitar, often they'll hit the body of the guitar with their palm to emphasize that backbeat. Or they'll, actually, usually that's the bass drum. They might like strum. Sometimes they'll strum like with their fingers, like almost flamenco style, on beats 2 and 4 while they're still fingering the chords, right? So that's something you kind of want to look at too, is like creating a sense of rhythm. That really adds a lot to the arrangement. You can see how when I'm playing the melody here, where is it? Here on beat 4, I'm emphasizing that backbeat just by playing an octave in the bass. So that's kind of another aspect you can look at in terms of adding another level. That might be like level 9 to the arrangement, or maybe that's for pop arrangements. That's like, you place, like level 6 with like adding a backbeat. So that's kind of how you do some of that. And again, I think I added level 8 or whatever, so to speak, by adding like a legato pentatonic run. These are some of the flashy. These are like kind of like the shreddy. This is like the stuff that if you play a lot of this, people are like, you shouldn't be playing bass like that. You should be just playing the roots. So, which, they do have a point. But it is kind of fun to kind of use these in your arrangement sometimes to kind of add a little bit of extra flash. It's kind of like an explosive thing. As long as you keep it, keep the melody and keep the groove going, it should still sound musical. So this one, for example, is a 2-octave arpeggio. Okay, so I wrote that as 8th note triplets, since that's how you should practice it to start. You're starting off slow and building up the speed. Eventually you get to 120 beats per minute and you're playing at 16th note triplets, so. Right? And that adds another explosive element. There's like, whoa, what is he doing there, right? So that's the minor version, that's the major version right there. Another one is like the diminished 7th thing. And then the legato pentatonic run. You can combine some of them, right? Right, so that was combining this one with this one, and then that just adds like, another level of just like virtuosity, which kind of captures people's attention. Is cool to use sometimes to just like, whoa, like what's he doing? But obviously, if you don't overuse it, because use it sparingly. I did want to get into this arrangement, which I played earlier. So this is the song Musica della Noche from my debut album, right? And what you can see here is I'm using kind of the 7 levels that I talked about earlier. You've got the bass line, which is here in the left hand, right? What do we got? Right, so that's just the left hand, right? But once it just sounds like a bass line to start off. But once you start adding different elements to it, it can really start to sound like a complete thing. This is in like a what is it? A montuno in the right hand. So this is kind of like an Afro-Cuban jazz type of thing. So what we're doing is we're basically playing this arpeggiated pattern in the right hand, and you notice how we're also filling in some of the gaps. Like once we have a bit of a rest in between notes, we can play 2 notes in the right hand to fill in some of the gaps in a harmony. And so this is just basically a montuno pattern in the right hand, and bass, what should we call it? A tumbao in the left hand. So the montuno would be something like, let's see. That type of thing. So if we can kind of combine those both, you'll see how it sounds. So you see how that kind of like fills up a lot of space, and it sounds like a whole song. You've got the piano part. The montuno is the piano part in Latin jazz music. So that's the right hand, and then we've got the tumbao, which is the left hand, the bass part. So piano, bass. You've got a little bit of melodic stuff here, and then if you go down here to this little piece here, you can see this is a 16th note trill in the right hand, and what's the tempo? 220 beats per minute. So this is not technically possible. Don't try this at home. Nobody in the world can play this. I used to be able to play this, and then I back when I had superpowers. But then Lex Luthor came in and took all my superpowers away, and I can't play it anymore. But basically what this is I actually managed to get this down for the record, but I haven't been able to play it since. But basically what it is, you got this trill, right? But you're actually holding down a note with your ring finger at the same time, so it's like something like that. Right? It's real. I don't know how I managed to get it, but it was obviously maybe I just had 6 gallons of coffee that day and I was able to pull it off. But it was So but that's a cool element. That's again we're getting to like level 7 or 8 there in the arrangement where we're adding things that kind of just that extra flair. I was imagining being in like a Latin jazz ensemble and the first trumpet, just like, I was imagining Arturo Sandoval, he's a crazy Latin jazz trumpet player, and I was just imagining him doing this soaring trill up high in the trumpet there, and I was like, okay, that would sound cool. I was trying to mimic that on the bass. That's what I was kind of going for. So again, with your arrangements, you kind of, that's another thing you can add. Don't think about how this, just don't get stuck in the box of what something should sound like on your instrument or what's idiomatic to your instrument. Think outside the box. Think about what would this sound like if an orchestra played this? What would this sound like if John Corswood's Latin Jazz Ensemble played this? Think about this if a rock band played this or something like that. What kind of extra things would they add? that trill might be one of them. So little things like that. Think outside the box. Think about your arrangement as if somebody was arranging it for a large ensemble. This is more like melodic stuff. A lot of other crazy stuff. Basically, what I'm getting at here is you have. We went over the 7 levels earlier, and this kind of arrangement kind of encompasses a lot of that kind of levels 1 through 7. So yeah, I mean, this is kind of how you might go about constructing one of your arrangements, whether it be for one instrument, bass, or any other instrument, or for a full orchestration. And that's kind of should get you from steps 1 through 7. And again, you don't have to use all the steps to make something sound complete or musical. Sometimes you only need step 1, right? Its dynamics are important too, right? So yeah, I guess that kind of sums up a lot of what I wanted to talk about. I have exercises here, like this bossa nova exercise and stuff like that, but I would almost rather just in the last couple minutes here, just open up to any questions anybody might have about this.
Yeah, like you do this solo, but then on your album you have it with a band and stuff. So how would you adjust the arrangement to play with other instrumentation?
Good question. You played on that record, right? You played. You're the guy. So, good question. Yeah. One of the things I did was you'll notice how part of the arrangement I play the melody during the chorus. So you basically got this kind of tumbao type rhythm in the left hand, and you've got this. That's the actual melody. When I'm arranging that for the band, I'll just give that melody to, say, the sax player or the guitar player, right? And then I'll just turn the bass line into something that stands well on its own and kind of supports the band, right? I mean, that already fills up a ton of space, but the idea is like, we're kind of playing like something percussive and a bass line at the same time. If the band was filled out enough, I could just play. Right? So it depends on the size of the ensemble, but if I arrange this for like a trio, with Sangito and on congas and Brent Ma and tenor saxophone. And I just have Brent Ma playing, articulating the melody, and Sangito's laying it down on the percussion. That gives me room and space to sometimes just go. Right, I'm just playing the bass because those guys are already filling so much space. Brent Ma's like shredding on the saxophone, just like going, orbiting in outer space, and Sangito's just like laying down the groove like there's no tomorrow. So all I need to do is, I just need to be the bass player for once, and then, and then I'm good, right? So, and I actually do my job. So that's that. Now, another piece to that is if you add more instruments to that, if you add like a harmony instrument, like a guitar or a piano, again, then I don't have to do the tapping. Then I just basically give the piano player my right hand, and then I just play the left hand by myself. So that's kind of what I might do in that circumstance. Gnarly.
So this could all be extrapolated to, like, say, fingerstyle guitar or even like arranging?
Exactly, right? So like for fingerstyle guitar, basically you could interpret this as this bottom staff here that I'm using for the left hand and the bass, that's your thumb now. That's, right? Usually, right? a lot of classical guitar players will just they use their thumb to articulate the bass on the lower strings, right? And instead of like slapping, they might strum to articulate the backbeat, and things like that, right? And in arranging, right, you can go right from, level 1, which is just a melody, all the way up to maximalist level 7 or beyond, right? So yeah, you can extrapolate this to any situation you want. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen his videos. He's insane. Yeah. Yeah, kind of like trying to create polyphony with his instrument, right? And I guess like playing with this is just like showing off, right? I mean, you could do it. I mean, I don't see if there's any reason to do that rather than this, but I mean, it looks cool. Oh, this? Like the upside down, you mean? Right, that's true actually. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Okay, who, sorry? Jeff Healy, okay. Oh, okay. That's awesome. Sweet. Anyway, so, sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good question. Yes. You'll notice that here's my multiple staff version of the bass line. We're confining the bass line to the E string. So on a 6-string bass, that's the second lowest sounding string. A string and the low B, right? And do I have anything? Here's a low B, right? So the low bottom, usually, not all the time, I can find the melody to top 3 strings, bass line to bottom 3 strings. If you're on a 4-string bass, it would be like 2 and 2, right? Not all the time, because sometimes you just, in terms of ergonomics, you might need to play the melody on the A string. But generally, as a rule of thumb, that's, because what will end up happening is if I play the melody here and the bass line here, right? Only one note makes a sound. So yeah, totally. Awesome.
Yeah, I'll throw one to her question is, can you break down the various techniques that you're using? So like what's happening and also slapping.
So what do you mean, like?
So like through your like left and right hand, like you're doing a lot of tapping and whatnot, but how do you also like do the strumming, tapping, and
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's a tricky thing. Basically, how I think of it is very like a technical way of thinking about it. Anytime I have like roughly an 1/8 note worth of time to get between one technique to another, that's kind of like enough time for me to transition into another technique. So Get Lucky, for example. Sorry. You notice I'm using that rest where I don't have to play anything in the right hand to jump over to the fingerboard and slap and pluck. The other thing I'm doing is I'm tapping more notes in my left hand to fill that space up while my hand is moving. You see? See that? I played 2 notes in my left hand and then jumped over to slap on the backbeat. Right, so that's kind of, you use that kind of space, and sometimes one hand can do something that gives the other hand chance to move over. Does that make sense? Excellent. I think that basically concludes our masterclass here. So thank you so much for having me. I've been Colin Sankey, and it's been a pleasure to be back here. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for having me. And yeah, awesome.